Perfect. Okay. Welcome, Jeremy. Thank you for joining us. Do you want to start off with a little intro about yourself and Zendesk?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Hey guys, thanks for joining us. So yeah, Jeremy Ambrose. I'm a partnership manager at Zendesk. Zendesk is customer service software, globally recognized. We have nearly 5,000 employees, so around 160,000 customers, and we operate with probably. Well, you've probably used us somewhere along the way, even without probably realizing. If you've ever interacted with this, so Zoom, ever got hold of Zoom, then that our customer service software actually powers Zoom, and lots of other different things. So that's what I do. I look after partnerships with VCs, with accelerators, anybody kind of startup facing. The reason why I do that is my background is that I'm a co-founder and director of Entrepreneurial Spark, which is a large accelerator out of the UK, which we sold to NatWest in 2018, and then carried on the story and the journey and went a bit more global with it. So we've supported entrepreneurs globally since then. So yeah, that's me. That's why I'm here. But my favorite topic is what I'm just about to talk about, which is customer trends, customer intelligence, customer experience, and hopefully giving you some actual insights to take away and work with in your business straight away.
Actually, can we start off by talking about what is customer ops? What is customer intelligence?
Yeah, and do you know what it was? It was one of the first questions I got when I did this in person. It was like, well, why are you talking about CX? What is CX? So customer experience. And X could be any part of it. So the trends that we're talking about, it could be the journey that your customer goes on to buy from you and to stay with you, return to you. It can be data that you collect on your customer, which will help you look at your roadmap, product development roadmap, your next step, your next part of the entrepreneurial journey. So there's lots of things that kind of are encapsulated by what we call CX. But I guess the overall thing is that it's all about your customer and getting data from them.
Okay. And how far along does a startup need to be in order to have meaningful customer intelligence?
Oh, okay. So meaningful customer intelligence is the integral part there, because actually starting off on your customer ops strategy should happen as soon as you get your first customer. In fact, probably before that, because you want to know what you need to get from your customer, what data points you want to receive to enable you to make poor decisions in your business. I'm not saying they're the only data points that you need to take across the whole business. There are loads of financial, market, all of that. But the key point is your first customer, interacting with them to understand why they bought from you. To understand where they could have dropped off from buying from you, to understand what will make them return, and I guess helping them understand what the value proposition that they saw was to actually buying from you. And when I'm talking about value propositions, I'm talking about the set of benefits and values that you promise to deliver to your customer. To give you a quick example, coconut oil. I was talking to two entrepreneurs the other day, and one of them said they bought coconut oil for cooking with. The other one bought coconut oil to put in her hair to make it shine. Same product, completely different reason for buying from you. And they're the data points that you need to be collecting, understanding certain benefits and values that you're delivering to somebody and giving them that motivation to buy. And that starts from day dot for me.
Okay, so if you're a startup, let's say you are B2B SaaS, you have your first few customers, and you want to start developing an intentional customer journey and trying to collect meaningful data points, how would you go about setting up that process?
Okay, B2B SaaS. So first off, look at the person who's actually interacting with you and making the buying decision for a start. I think you've got to understand their motivation to buy by asking them questions. I think the first part of any customer experience or strategy within customer experience is What are the set of questions that you need to ask a potential business or a business that's already bought from you to understand why, how, all of the different questions that can then enable you to make your next step. So I think the first port of call is getting yourself a set of questions which you can ask a customer to give you real life intelligence that you can take back into the business to have discussions about within your team. And when I say having discussions within your team, everybody should be across this, right? Everybody should be across the strategy that you put in place, because everybody can add into it. If you get a customer talking to you about the cost plan, the financial model that you've got in place, it doesn't work for them or won't work in 6 months' time once tax increases or something like that, the financial teams need to be involved in that, because then they can make decisions off the back of it. They're telling you how they bought from you, and they're going through a series of interactions with you, and that you'll be able to understand why they've come to you and what messaging angle they took or resonated with them. The marketing team need to be associated with that, or the person who's in charge of external messaging. So starting out with a set of questions that you can then bring in-house to have discussions about is probably where I would start if you're completely new to strategizing over your customer experience. Okay,
that makes sense. And I know a lot of the startups will have teams or in the cohort of like maybe 5 through 7 and under. We have a few teams that are larger than that. But so are you saying because most of the companies will have like, CEO, their head engineer, maybe head marketing, maybe have head of community. So is customer ops something that sits within all of the teams? And do you recommend kind of like dividing up it equally between people, or what's the best structure there?
Yeah. So we as Zendesk do a report every single year, and we survey high growth businesses, unicorns. We survey those that are kind of flatline in zombie mode, all of them, to find out what they did in their businesses to grow at the speed that they're growing at, particularly with obviously customer experience. Now, if I come back and look at those that are in high growth and those that are in unicorn mode, yes, of course, some of the bigger businesses plus 50 employees, they'll have a team that is across this, right? But when you're smaller, there should be a time in a week or a time every 2 weeks, whatever that might look like for you, to go, right, let's sit down and talk about what's the customer feedback that we've had. What's the journey looking like right now? Where can it fall down? Are the logistics company that we're using, DHL, whoever it is, have they got strikes going on? Have they, there has to be a set time for everybody who has any ounce of customer interaction to come together and talk about that. And I would say your financial team, your marketing, your sales, your tech, they should all be around a table and understand what the customer is saying. Yeah.
All hands effort then. Okay.
I think so.
So after you establish like the first set of questions, you understand what the value proposition is that's connecting with either your target users or your customers. What's next? Do you start looking at how they're engaging with the product? And that might be like, how many minutes per week they're spending on it, or retention. Like what's the next step there?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. The majority of early stage startups, they're probably operating in Google Docs or some web forms or something like that, right? Perfectly normal. I personally think the next step is to start automating. And when I say automating, I'm not saying automating your customer service requirements and getting it off your desk and table. What I'm saying is bring something that's going to help you into the business, get that core data, manage it so that you can bring it around the table in an easy way to have those conversations about. And of course, I'm going to say there's great software out there to do that for sure. But it's about you guys around here talking about systemizing, automating, and almost having that data on tap to then understand, process, and have those conversations about. So next step is look at the things that, and the tools and the people and the resource that you've got around you that can help you gather that data and that core insight into helping you to move forward. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And then what do you see as like the common pitfalls that people have in their early days, maybe other than like not collecting data? Like, could that be paying attention to the wrong bits of feedback? Like you're listening to all the different feedback rather than like, getting too granular. What are the biggest like red flags?
What are the biggest red flags? I guess, it's difficult because when you think about what the great businesses do, that's probably a better way to look at it, about what they know, all the red flags.
Yeah.
So for me, if you look at kind of customer acquisition of a customer right now, from 2014 to now, the cost of customer acquisition has increased by 70%, right?
Yeah.
So I think a big red flag for me is once you've got that customer, how are you interacting with them post-sale to retain them? Because one of the other trends that's coming out is that if that customer, if you as a business focus or increase retention and acquisition by 1% each, right? If you just focus, put more resource by 1%, if you focus on retention versus acquisition, your retention, if you focus the 1% more on that, will return 3.97x. Wow. on your revenue. So for me, a big red flag is if you've got a customer, you're ignoring them after the sale. You've got to retain them. So that would be a big red flag for me.
Okay, that makes sense.
Other red flags, not focusing on it, not understanding the impact of how it can affect the whole business. So if I look across, again, those kind of the unicorns and the high growth businesses, they understand that customer experience can help them with their brand trust in the market. It can help them with, it can shape the product roadmap that they've got ahead of them. It can identify cross-sell opportunities. With that intelligence that you're collecting from these customers, you can understand their buying habits. You can understand how you can then get in their customer journey and their way to go, hey, you bought this, how about this? Or 90% of customers who bought this product also got this. You need batteries for that thing. Here's some AAA battery, whatever that looks like. If you don't focus on the cross-sell opportunities and understand the data that's coming in, again, red flag for me.
I was doing some online shopping the other day, and in my shopping cart, they added in an additional product. They're like, oh, people who bought this also love this. Had already had it in my cart, in my cart, and I just had to like click the green button to also add it. And it was like terrifying, but I mean, incredibly tempting at the same time. That's pretty crazy. What, in terms of the unicorns that Zendesk works with, what are the things that they do differently? I mean, other than the fact they have more inquiries, they have larger teams. Like, are there any insights there on why they've, established such a good reputation for customer experience that startups could, steal?
Sure. So I guess looking at the high growth businesses, 2 unicorns, right? And those two brackets of people that we survey, 33% are more likely to add some sort of support function in the first year after investment. All right. So the first year after investment, they are, and that's seed, they are adding some sort of support. We can go a bit more into what I deem as support and what you should be deeming as support, but that's the kind of the key. 33% more are more likely to do it, add that support. That key number, 33%, is also evident when you look at omni-channel support after year 2. So going into year 2 after investment, 33% more of those high growth, or to get to those high growth business and unicorn status, they're adding omni-channel support. What do I mean by omni-channel support? You're meeting your customer where they want to be met. So if your customer wants to be interacted with you via, I don't know, Facebook Messenger, you've got the support function to back that up. If they want to email, you've got that. If they want to WhatsApp you, then you've got that. That's what I mean by omni-channel. It's meeting your customer where they are, and 33%. You're 33% more likely to hit high growth if you're doing that in year 2 after investment. The other sizable difference, I think, between those unicorns, high growth, and those that are kind of zombie and kind of flatlining, is the level of support articles. I mean, and this kind of comes back to the self-help and the trends that we see. So if you've got a customer right now and they've asked you a question, are you storing those questions somewhere to be able to then play back to future customers and to help them get in and off your platform as quick as possible without even interacting with you? So 27% more self-service content in the first 24 months after investment. That's what you find in high growth and unicorn. 27% more self-help. That could be articles, guides, all of that stuff. So yeah.
Between a B2B and B2C startup, who needs to invest or who needs to spend more time on customer ops in the really early days?
B2B and B2C. So I guess the answer to that is that a B2B business, the business is the customer. And a B2C customer, the customer is the customer, right? But throughout, you are still dealing with humans and you're still dealing with customers. So I don't think there's any difference between B2B and B2C about who should be focusing on their customer and gaining that data and understanding it more to then understand how they can overcome a barrier into their growth, right? So I don't think there's a difference. I genuinely don't. You still got a customer. It's just that one's an organization and one's an individual.
That makes sense. Quick reminder, everyone, I know Joe's already put a few questions in the chat, but we'll move to questions in about 10 minutes or so. Jeremy, pulling from your experience with the accelerator and working so much with startups, how do you see founders leveraging like their customer ops and their customer data when they're raising a funding round? I mean, obviously if they have like great retention, that's awesome. And investors love that. But are there any other ways that people can like show off how much the customers love the product, or that they're at least like tracking this data?
Yeah. So I guess working on both sides, accelerator and working with VCs and seeing what they want to see in pitch decks, and see who's raising and who's not raising, and what people are putting in their decks from a customer service angle. Yeah, not everybody that comes through a door of a VC with a pitch deck has like customer feedback or customer interaction or customer experience slide. But from what I've seen, those that do have that builds trust within the investor, because it's almost like you don't have to take it from me. Here's what my customers are saying, and that builds trust. So you're more likely to raise if you have something in there about customer experience. The other thing they want to know is what's their return on investment. Obviously, that's what they're in it for. So if you can show where you're going to get that customer, where you're going to get their return on investment from by really understanding your customer journey, how you're going to interact with your customer, and how you're going to build that retention and the acquisition, then you've got a better opportunity of raising that round because they trust you more. So I think just looking across that angle, the first thing I'd say is get yourself a slide in your deck all about customer experience or customer journey. I would have it in there because it just makes the person who's looking at it from a VC point of view understand your customer journey more, helps them understand that your customer journey, and they can then see a clearer route to return on an investment because you're focusing on your customer.
If we ignore churn, what are ways to determine how much customers like your product? Like, how do you tell whether someone's like at a 6 out of 10 versus a 9 out of 10?
Yeah, absolutely. So churn's obviously the one that you want to be focusing on for sure. But outside of that, looking at, let's see. So look at product reviews, anything that you've got coming in from a product review stance, and doing some kind of sentiment analysis on those, the words that they're using. That can give you a good idea of how happy or sad they are, right? See customer satisfaction scores. Use a product that use something that's going to generate you a CSAT score to then have a look at, well, yeah, how many people are saying good things about you. The other thing is your NPS. You know, how many promoters do you have out there versus detractors? But it's not about getting a score and going, oh, we're a 7.9. But why are you 7.9? You know, what's actually getting, what's making people a detractor? And therefore, where in that customer journey can we have a meaningful impact to increase our NPS score? So if your NPS score is low, your CSAT score is low, your sentiment analysis on any kind of product review is not looking great, then these are core indicators that you need to go back and have a look at your customer engagement strategy and say, well, what meaningful impact can we have? But that comes from getting the data in the first place. So it almost comes back full circle to where we were before and saying like, okay, where do we start? We need to get something in place that's going to build the data set out for us to meaningfully understand what we need to do next to increase our CSAT, NPS, decrease our churn, increase our retention, and all those key metrics, I guess.
How do you make sure you're not like annoying your customers by asking them, questions and surveys?
Yeah, because let's be real about this. Not everyone's going to interact with you, and we've got to be comfortable with that, right? And bombarding them with a whole load of emails. I mean, I recently bought a ski helmet, right? And I hope Roadblocks aren't on here. But I bought a ski helmet, and I had maybe 5 emails in the first 10 minutes of making that purchase. And the last one was, hey, how did we do? And I'd already switched off, right? I'd already switched off. I didn't read it. It just got deleted. So yeah, how do you actually understand where and when? All right. It's a simple answer. You've got to understand your customer, your core customer, those that are buying from you, and understand their buying habits, where they hang out, where they are most likely to actually interact with you, what time are they most active on their email if it's going out on email. So understanding your customer habits will enable you to send the right message at the right time to get interaction. How do you do that? A/B tests, send something out on a Saturday afternoon when the football's on. Send something out on a Sunday morning when somebody's just getting up, and see what your interaction rate is for both of those. And then understand, well, actually, what's working for me, and therefore I can send that comm out, that one integral comm, maximum 2 to 3, but it goes out at the right time that's going to get your ears and eyes on it.
Makes sense. And okay, taking a slight right turn or left turn, I don't know what that phrase is. I know you were talking, we were talking previously about the fact that your accelerator, you did a lot of like psychological mentoring and working with founders. And so I'm curious to know, what were the biggest like mental roadblocks that you saw founders consistently encountering?
Yeah. Yeah. So we're a mindset-led accelerator. We kind of understood that you could go and get your legal support from a legal person. You can go and get your accounting support. There's so many professional services out there you can get, but nobody's actually supporting you on your journey as an individual. And that was core because our founders, we had failures and we had successes. the key thing for the successes was that we had mentors, we had people in front of us that we could have, you know, bash ideas around with, and we had support up here. So what are the core things that I see in people within customer service? I saw it 2 weeks ago, and it's the one that stands out every single time, right? Somebody has, and I'm not going to say who, but 40 customers. 40 customers. And because they are at MVP stage, or they're at kind of early stage, they didn't want to get the feedback from those customers on the product because they felt embarrassed by the product. I'm like, well, that's a big mental blocker. Like, why aren't you asking? You've got 40 people who have bought from you, and you're not asking them real great questions to enable a greater experience for them in the future and to retain them. So I think the biggest blocker is actually reaching out to these people, reaching out to these customers, having conversations with them. It's not easy. And it's the last thing that goes, you know, on the list of things to do when trying to build a startup, right? You've got to have those customer conversations. Definitely. Other mental roadblockers, cash in the business versus outlay onto different software products and things, and how they can help you, for sure. We see it, you know, customer service software is the first thing to go when thinking about how I can build my business. But there's a kind of a mental blocker in there, because if you can automate your customer experience, let me rewind. I'm not saying automate the whole thing. If you can understand your customer better, if you can personalize their journey, if you can hit them in the right place, and I'm talking about omni-channel, if you can have 24/7 support so they can get in and get off in a seamless and quick manner, and you can give your staff back time to work on the core things that need to be done in the business, then why wouldn't you invest in that? Why wouldn't you invest in cross-sell opportunities? And yeah, somebody's bought a core product off you, or somebody's buying a service from you. Why wouldn't we put something in their place to go, hey, we did this with these guys, this really worked. How about this additional service that we're going to provide you? So I think one of the biggest blockers in customer service is understanding what the tools are that you might actually have to spend a bit of money on to actually return 10x on. Yeah.
Actually, that leads me to my other question, and then Joe, I'll go take your question from the chat. How much should founders be allocating to this? Like, all of our founders are post pre-seed, and many are closing their seed round hopefully within the next 6 months. What does that like expected expenditure for the first year look like?
Yeah. There are many tools out there that you can get hold of for free, right? There's so many different things that you can kind of play around with in your business. So I guess there's probably an expenditure of time and an expenditure of money, and understanding what it's going to take to get you to where you want to get to. So if we're looking at kind of those that haven't raised, how can software or how can tools help you to gain insight and information that you can then put onto your deck, which will then help you get that raise? I think those that are post-raise, how much time should we be spending on how much money? Again, you've got to look at the return. What can you return off the back of outlaying money and time into this kind of resource and this technology? How long is a piece of string? I don't know. I don't know how it'll differ for each individual business. And it kind of comes down to the value of the information that you can get, the value of how much time you can give back to your team to work on the things that matter the most, and also how much your customer or person you're operating with gain from you adding in these layers of support to then keep and retain, to give you that kind of, as we talked about earlier, that 3.97x on revenue. So I think there's an understanding piece before you go into any of this to get it right. But we're talking about that first year, and I would say get some tools, because the biggest expenditure you're going to have to do in that first year is time. And go and play with some things that might actually help you and put them in your customer's way and see what works and what doesn't work.
Okay. And then at what point do you see people bringing on like their, let's say team, like 2 to 3 customer ops or customer experience people within the team, rather than just like having tools and supporting it, with your small team of 5 people?
You'll get to a critical point, right? You'll get to a critical point of customer interaction, or we call them tickets. Because initially, I'm going to use Zendesk as an example, because of what I know. So tickets are produced when somebody interacts with you. That ticket then sits in your back of house, and you then put that to somebody who can answer that question or that inquiry. So if that's a finance question, you tag the person, it goes up to finance, and they answer the question in real time. All right, that's the process. But if you're getting a high volume of tickets about one certain thing, then you can answer that in self-help guides.
Yeah.
So the software is almost, any software out there that does this customer is scalable, because all of those tickets are giving you information which you can then kind of throw back at them in a self-help guide, and then you won't get that volume of tickets. So when do you start adding those 2 to 3 people on? It's when you start getting different inquiries, I would say, about different parts of your product or your user journey or your core value. If those tickets exceed a certain volume and you're finding that those people can't actually deal with them, now it's time to actually increase the number of seats that you have dealing with the inquiries and those tickets, for sure. But there's no kind of, hey, once you hit 100 inquiries, you should have 4 seats. There isn't. Use case is different for every business that we see, but it's about you guys thinking about it in a scalable manner and going, well, what can I actually do to reduce the seats? And that's me doing myself out of a sale later down the line, right? But that's the question you should be asking yourself. How can I reduce my seats by automating responses and getting 24/7 help for these people coming in and off their platform?
That makes sense. Okay, Joe, I'm going to take your question. Reminder, if you want to ask the question live, just raise your hand. Okay, how do we ask these questions without freaking out an enterprise client and without them leaving feeling like we're learning through our engagement with them in a way that's negative, not positive? It's a good question.
So how do we ask these questions without freaking out an enterprise client and without leaving them feeling like we are learning through our engagement with them in a way that is negative, not positive? How do we do that? Right. So yeah, because enterprise customers are going to bring us the bigger bucks, right? They're bigger ticket sale for sure. How do we go on that journey to ask them great questions? First off, building a good relationship with them, helping them understand why you're asking them questions. And I would be replaying back to them that every interaction that we have is only going to help your customer experience later down the line with us. You're going on the journey with us to help us grow. I know we all want to act bigger than we are, but if we're also asking them questions about what benefits and what values they see in us, then we can understand the right questions to ask them as well. Working with big enterprise customers is all about empathy, understanding who you're talking to. Some of the big bods at Zendesk who do sales, they talk about doing customer research to the nth degree to go into those conversations, knowing that person, to build the trust and to keep them on the hook to talk to them more. So and when I say that, I mean things like, okay, what's their product focus? What's their roadmap looking like in the next 12 months? What are their values? Because if you know their values, then you can speak to them through the questions you ask, and they'll feel welcome. The questions will feel welcome to them. What do they want to achieve by interacting with you and your product or service? Who else are they talking to? talk to talk to that angle. So there's lots of different ways you can build up that trust to then be able to ask them a poignant question. But for me, it's absolutely about building a great relationship with the person you're talking to enable you to ask that question.
That's such a good point, because it's so easy with the big enterprises to just think, well, it's like feels like a faceless, soulless, massive company. But yeah, you're right. Actually, I'm really curious, Gabriel, I'm about to take your question, but can we say a show of hands of people who have like an intentionally set up customer ops system right now? So just raise your hand on Zoom if you have one. Okay, got like 5 or so, 6. Okay. Well, you know what we'll be asking you at the end of the week in the weekly updates. No, I'm kidding. I'm not kidding, actually. We will ask this. But Gabriel, okay, do you want to ask a question? I'm assuming it's the same one in the chat. Otherwise, I can ask both.
Yeah, I'm gonna give some context to the one in the chat, but basically I'm building Tutti, which is Airbnb for creative spaces. So we help people find and book amazing spaces for film shoots, photo shoots, etc. We are also building software for our supply side. So we are quite good at getting feedback from suppliers. We are building relationships with all of them, and they are very good at giving us direct feedback and being like, that's great, that's shit, stuff like that. Who we're not so great at getting feedback from are the demand side, because they come in, they see our site, they use it briefly, they disappear, they might come back and use it again. So we've sent them loads and loads of follow-up messages when they have sent through a booking. 50%, maybe less actually, reply to those in messages. And then 95% of the replies are just like, it was great, cool. That doesn't really help us. So I'm trying to figure out a better way of asking for feedback that'll give us more indication of like what we could do better. And yeah, any thoughts on that?
We've all had it, right? We've all had an email that says, hey, what did you think of us? And it's the kind of question that drains us, and we just want to, you know, if we do answer it, it's going to be, yeah, it's great. It's like, thanks, go away, quick, seamless, get it out of the intro.
Yeah.
The best ways I've seen this done, and the best ways that I've seen interacted with, is when you get really personal with the person that you're actually talking to. And when I say personal, I mean, you know, what language are they using? If you're dealing with creatives, they have a different language to it, like a professional service, right? So talk to them in the language that they want to be talked to. Also, those open-ended questions are, yes, what we really want to get the sentiment analysis and blah, blah, blah. But hey, why don't we just kind of funnel them down a track of interesting responses? And if they do fill that in, then we could probably go a bit further and ask, you know, the why. But I would have your core reasons, or the core answers to those questions and those answers are the way that person is going to want to interact with you to give you the best data to understand why. So I would say there's definitely a bit in the way you're asking the questions, and I've seen it work really well elsewhere, and also understanding the language that they want to be spoken to. I would also say if they're just responding with thanks, goodbye, or thanks, it was great, then take that as a positive. You know, there's probably nothing broken. But also you may have hit them at the wrong time when they've got 20 other things to do. So
creatives always have 20 other things to do. That's the tricky thing.
Just like entrepreneurs, yeah. And in that case, think about where I know we always talk about it, you are not your customer, but you know, creative and an entrepreneur, you know where you interact with people and how you interact with people. So maybe play that back to them.
Cool. Do you have any examples of you've seen it done well? Like, does Zendesk have blog posts about this, or any examples?
Yeah. Okay, so do we have blog posts about it? There's plenty of resources online. On YouTube, type in Zendesk and then a keyword. On YouTube, plenty of videos about how. I will also share the building your customer experience or how successful startups handle CX on a Zing tree. Let me put that into the chat right now. That'll hit the bottom. By all means, have a quick look at that. That's a resource that we've created for you to have a look at. Asking great questions. I would easily go back to the mum test. You know, we may all think we're way past the mum test, but it's a great little thing to get hold of and revisit. And I think the other thing you need to revisit is probably that value proposition, that statement of benefits and values that you deliver to your customer to help them understand why they're interacting with you, so you can play that, you know, turn the volume up on that when you're asking those core questions. Have I seen some great questions asked? Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard of Get Baked, which is a Leeds bakery, right? They're doing it amazingly because they know exactly who their core customer is, and they ask me questions in my own language. And the answers are always in my own language as well, because they know exactly who their customer is. So I would go revisit that kind of style, but also those that are in your industry. You know, how else? Who in your industry is doing this well?
Cool. Thank you.
Go visit them. Yeah, keep them close.
All right. I'm gonna take a question from Daniel really quick, and then Raphael, I'll go over to you. Okay, so Daniel asks, what's the main criteria you believe should be taken into account when choosing the right CRM? He has experience with Keep, K-E-A-P, and loved it, but is looking into alternatives.
Okay. Let's make the differentiation between a CRM system and a customer support software service or customer support software, right? The CRM is where you manage the relationships between your customer and you. You could probably outreach to them, but it's probably a tool that is more kind of database, I would say, and a nice pool of data. Then over on this side, the customer service software is the stuff that actually interacts with the customer or brings in the data to then feed the CRM system. So what are the main criteria? First off, that CRM system has to be malleable to your use case. If it's a fixed CRM system that just asks 4 questions or just enables you to just do 1 or 2 things with it, then it's not going to work for you. So make sure that it's malleable to your use case. What else about it? It has to talk to the rest of your stack. It has to integrate seamlessly into what you do day to day. So when I'm thinking about Zendesk and what my use case is for Zendesk, I use the CRM system. It's called Cell, and that integrates with Airtable. Airtable is a superb software for storing data. And it integrates with that. I use Zapier for actually outreaching to customers, as well as our own integrated software, but again, it's integrated. Salesforce, we're an enterprise software, so you know what we aren't in our CRM part is for enterprise. What we are for is kind of small to medium-sized businesses. So we also integrate with Salesforce, and we pull in data from there. So integration is really key to make everything seamless across the business. Make sure it works. And Slack, it comes in Slack as well. Certainly our customer service tool does as well. So CRM, make sure it's malleable to your use case. Make sure you can update all the fields in there to get the data that you want and store the information that you want. Make sure you can use it to outreach to customers in some way, either through the tool itself or through a party integrated, an app integration. And I can't remember the third point, probably about integration, but make sure that it is all coming together in a seamless manner to make sure there's no extra work on your behalf.
Right. Raphael, I saw that you put your hand down, but I know you had a question. Do you want to go?
Yes, perfect. Thanks. So my question, I've actually added to the chat as well, but my main question is around how you actually balance the great customer support that you give in the very early days when you're like just bringing in your first sort of customers, and then obviously, in order to scale that, you have to kind of like make sure that you're still delivering that great support, but in a more scalable manner. So how do you balance that in your view, Jeremy?
Yeah. If I had a pound for every time a founder said to me, I'm going to take on somebody else, but they won't be able to interact with the customer the way that I interact with the customer, I would be a very rich man, right? So I think first off, scaling your processes and procedures to make sure that everybody's across this from an early stage and they understand the way we interact with customers is a big thing. I also think that having that kind of cross-company view of any customer interaction will build the knowledge in any of your team members about your customer, and everybody's on the same page. And that kind of comes back to you, your tech person, your finance person, your marketing person, whoever, you're all around the table talking about this stuff, so that all of your pearls of wisdom and nuggets can actually be fed down at an early stage and built up to a point where you can bring people on and they will understand they will understand how to interact with customers to get the best out of them. Because yeah, we're obviously going to have personal experiences with customers at an early stage, but how do you actually scale that customer interaction? How do you actually scale that customer support? One of the biggest trends that we're seeing in 2023 is the integration of AI into customer service. But it's not just about adding something into what you've got already. It's about the seamless interaction between the AI and then the human at the end, because you're still going to need humans to actually solve problems. So that crossover between your AI and your human is where the real magic's going to happen when you scale up as well. So something that I'd be focusing on is that seamless interaction between your customer experience, that is your software, and the human element. And if people can understand that bridge and that gap between the two, and you can teach that, then again, that kind of, as you grow and you scale, anybody who's interacting with a customer knows how to interact, and it's all seamless, quick, and people can get in and off on their way.
Yeah, got it. And do you have any views on, for example, delivering above and beyond from a customer support and experience perspective in the beginning, in the sense of in which you're like kind of like even setting aside time from your team to meet up with the client, like in person, or do a particular workshop so that they can get the bang for the buck and make the best use of the product. But then you slightly have to ease that down in order to scale, because you're not going to be able to offer your team's time just as much as you would when you have like hundreds, thousands of clients, for example. So what's your view when it comes to that?
You're not going to get away from it at an early stage. And the more conversations you have with customers, the more data you're going to get. But what that data does, it then helps you build the systems and procedures at a later stage to remove the need for you to go out and speak and wine and dine every single customer that you have. So I think to kind of answer your own question, you can't. We have 160,000 customers. We're not all on the phone to them 24/7, and not all of them want to be spoken to 24/7. What you've probably got an early stage is early adopters, and I'm talking about kind of Roger's adoption curve here when I talk about early adopters. And those early adopters thinking about, they know they've got a problem. Well, they're after the shiny things, and they want something new, but they know they've got a problem, and they know that they're actively looking to solve it, and they'll interact with you loads. When you get into the later stage, the majority, the late majority, they don't want to interact with you on a number of different points. So actually your customer will dictate how they interact with you, and that will give you guidance on how much interaction you should be having with them. But yeah, absolutely, it's not scalable to continue to have conversations every day with customers. So you've got to automate that. You've got to get that data in great format to then have great conversations with it inside.
Awesome, thanks. That's very, very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I got a question from Anthony in the chat. What about GDPR? If a user has not opted in, then can you send them welcome/onboarding emails, surveys, etc.?
Ooh, the old GDPR thing. Okay.
Bastard.
Yeah. So if they've interacted with you via email, then they've given you their details. I would also be, if you're adding in any kind of software or any kind of interaction with them, then you should be trying to get that data straight away by, you know, incentivizing them to give them your email or whatever. If they're giving you that, then you're more than welcome to go and speak to them. You have to have an opt-out, otherwise, and an unsubscribe. Otherwise, you might get some lovely feedback or a message from government. But
yeah,
the
sorry,
thing,
expand on that a little bit. So it's a mobile payments app, right? So first thing they do is sign up, go through registration flow, so we're capturing phone, email, blah blah blah. But for one to understand, they need to explicitly opt in. That's why I'm just trying to be cautious of what that line is, and you know, just because we've got the details doesn't mean we're actually allowed to use it.
no, I think again, you kind of answered your own question there. If you've got an opt-in, then they're going to tell you whether you can speak to them or not. And yes, GDPR rules are very strict about making sure that you're not soliciting to people that don't want to be spoken to. I've seen it done quite cleverly with opt-out. So specific messaging about everybody opts in unless you tick this box to opt out. And there's clever ways you could do that. I'm not an expert on GDPR, and I would not profess to be, and I don't want to give you any advice on it. So I would probably go and read great articles about who's nailed GDPR and who hasn't. But from a customer interaction point, yeah, we shouldn't be interacting with people who don't want to be interacted with. That's yeah, straight off the cuff, definitely.
Oh, cool, thank you.
All right. Are there any last questions? Okay. Jeremy, where can people find out more about you and Zendesk? Actually, I'll just answer that second question now because we have the button on the platform. If you go into resources, you can get the offer that we have for Zendesk right on there. But is there anything else you want to add to that, Jeremy?
And I talked about that kind of year of support from a lot of other tools as well. So if you do use the offer, which it gets you 6 months free of Zendesk, the CRM system and the customer support, it's open up as well, so you can play with all of it. If you do that, then that also opens up to our big deal book as well. And that deal book enables you to look at, I think there's about 100 different software companies on there that are giving great deals. So yeah, if anything that I've said resonates with you, then by all means, sign up for the 6 months free, have a play with it, find your own use case, get support from our team because you get one-to-one onboarding with it as well, and utilize the people in our team to really go after it. Yeah. Does Zendesk integrate with HubSpot CRM? I believe so, even though they're a big competitor of ours.
All right. Great. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, Jeremy. I'll just stop the recording now.